You ever wonder how your weather app knows the forecast, like right now? Or how a ride-sharing app gets you a car in seconds? Well, the magic behind all of that is something called an API. They are the invisible glue holding our digital world together, and today we're going to pull back the curtain and talk about how to deploy them securely.
All right, so let's break this down with a really simple analogy. Think of an API as a waiter in a restaurant. You don't just walk into the kitchen yourself and start telling the chef what you want, right? No, you give your order to the waiter. That waiter then takes your request to the kitchen, which is the system, and then brings back exactly what you asked for. In a nutshell, that's all an API is. It's a messenger that handles requests and responses between different apps.
Seems simple enough, right? But this is where things get a little risky. What happens if that waiter is, careless? What if they accidentally give your credit card info to the table next to you, or they just leave the kitchen door wide open for anyone to wander in? See, when an API isn't secure, it's pretty much like having a really unreliable waiter handling some of your most sensitive information.
And this is the key takeaway. Securing these digital waiters isn't about just one lock or some quick fix. It's about building a really solid, disciplined process from the ground up. And thanks to a fantastic guide from the Center for Internet Security, we can actually break this whole thing down into 3 core pillars of secure deployment.
And here they are. First, you've got to fortify your foundation. Second, we have to control the chaos of all the constant updates. And finally, you have to prepare for impact. So let's jump right in.
Okay, let's kick things off with Pillar 1, fortify your foundation. The thinking here is simple. You absolutely cannot protect what you don't even know you have. This whole pillar is about getting a complete bird's-eye view of all your digital assets, and then making sure every single one is locked down and secure from day one.
And that really boils down to 4 key practices. First, you need a complete inventory. That way, no server or API gets left behind and becomes a security hole. Second, you have to separate your development and live production environments. This stops simple mistakes from ever impacting your customers. Third, you've got to encrypt all data while it's in transit, which basically makes it unreadable to anyone trying to snoop. And fourth, monitor absolutely everything and keep detailed logs so you have a crystal clear record if anything ever goes sideways. What's so important about this is the idea of a single point of truth. An asset inventory is not just some boring list. It's your map of the entire system. Without it, you've got massive blind spots, old servers, forgotten APIs that attackers are just dying to find and exploit. This inventory is what stops that from happening.
And that brings us to separation. Think about it. You wouldn't test out a brand new experimental recipe during a packed dinner service, would you? Of course not. The same exact logic applies here. Keeping your messy development work completely separate from your live production system is what prevents a simple coding error from taking down your entire service, or worse, exposing customer data.
Now let's talk encryption. This analogy just nails it. Sending unencrypted data over the internet is exactly like sending a postcard. Anyone who gets their hands on it can read your message. But using protocols like SSL or TLS, well, that's like putting your message inside a locked briefcase. Only the person who's supposed to get it has the key. In today's world, this is completely non-negotiable.
And finally, for this pillar, why do we bother keeping logs? Just think of them as the black box flight recorder for your system. When something goes wrong, and trust me, it will, those logs are the very first place you'll look to figure out exactly what happened, who was affected, and most importantly, how to make sure it never, ever happens again. So, we've built a strong foundation. But now we have to deal with a constant challenge, change. And that brings us to Pillar 2, control the chaos. Because the digital world never stands still, this pillar is all about how you manage all those updates and new features safely and without causing a total meltdown.
This is pretty much what a typical life cycle looks like. You launch your first version, V1. Then down the road, you release a new, better version, V2. But here's the thing, you can't just flip a switch and turn off V1. You have to communicate what's called a sunset date, which gives all your users plenty of time to switch over before you finally deactivate it for good.
So why is this so critical? Well, because old, unmaintained versions of an API are a massive security risk. They're like abandoned doors into your building. Nobody's watching them, they're not getting any security updates, and they become a prime target for attackers looking for an easy way in. By phasing them out, you shrink your attack surface, making it that much harder for the bad guys. So how do you do this without causing a huge mess? It really comes down to these 4 things. First, try to ensure backward compatibility so you don't break things for your current users. Second, test the new versions to catch bugs before they go live. Third, communicate clearly to everyone what's changing and when. And last but not least, document the entire process so you have a clear record. And that brings us to our final pillar, prepare for impact. This one is all about resilience. It's about accepting that perfect security just doesn't exist, and that eventually something will go wrong. The goal here is to minimize the damage and get back on your feet as fast as possible. Honestly, the best way to think about an incident response plan is to see it as a fire escape plan for your digital world, right? You don't wait until you see smoke and flames to start looking for the exits. You plan it out ahead of time, you practice it, and you make sure everyone on the team knows exactly what to do the second those alarm bells start ringing.
Now, to build that plan, you really need to understand two key metrics. The first one is RTO, which stands for Recovery Time Objective. This is all about speed. It answers one simple question: how fast do we absolutely have to recover? How much downtime can we handle before it causes serious damage to the business? Is it minutes, hours, a full day?
The second metric is RPO, or Recovery Point Objective. This one is all about the data. It asks a totally different but equally important question. How much data are we willing to lose? If you have to restore from a backup that's an hour old, is that okay? Or would losing an hour of transactions be a total catastrophe? These two numbers, RTO and RPO, define your recovery goals. And here is where you can make a huge difference. Look at this chart. That tall bar on the left, that's what happens with a manual response. Someone has to notice the problem, then figure out who to call, and eventually the right people get on it. Now look at that short bar on the right. That's an automated response. The system instantly detects the failure and pages the on-call team. Automation absolutely slashes that recovery time. So when you put it all together, fortifying your foundation, controlling the chaos, and preparing for impact, you're doing way more than just checking off tasks on a list. You're actually building a security mindset. It's a completely different way of thinking.
And this table really brings it home. Pillar 1, Fortify, is all about asset management, knowing and protecting your stuff. Pillar 2, Control, is about versioning, managing change safely, and Pillar 3, Prepare, is about incident response, planning for failure so you can bounce back. Together, they create a really powerful, holistic approach to security.
And when an organization really truly adopts these pillars, security stops feeling like a chore or just a bunch of annoying rules. It gets baked into the culture. It becomes a shared responsibility that builds resilience from the inside out and ultimately earns you the trust of your users. So, I'll leave you with this one final question to think about. When it comes to your own digital front door, are you actually building a fortress that's designed to stand up to real-world threats, or are you just checking a box on some compliance form? Because the answer to that question makes all the difference in the world.